The first time I saw his eyes on me, I felt it. A cold, alien sensation, like a shadow, falling over my sun-drenched afternoon. Not thrilling, not yet, just a prickle. A whisper against my skin that said, "You are not alone." But it wasn't a comforting presence. It was a hunting gaze. I told myself it was nothing, just the oppressive July heat, shimmering off the perfectly manicured lawns in Windermere, distorting the light. A trick of the eye. A figment of my weary, bored imagination. But then it happened again. And again. Until one sweltering afternoon, lying there, half dozing in the humid quiet, I opened my eyes and realized with a jolt that I wasn't just being observed. I was being studied. Every angle, every curve, every unguarded breath. A woman under a microscope, my life, my very being, suddenly laid bare. And the cruelest irony of it all, it started with sunlight. That glorious, innocent warmth on my skin. The lazy stretch of a seemingly perfect summer afternoon in a community so impeccably groomed it felt sterile, almost suffocating. The air thick with the cloying sweetness of blooming roses, the faint nostalgic tang of chlorine from the shimmering pools scattered throughout our little suburban paradise. I was stretched out on my favorite lounge chair in our sprawling backyard, the kind of afternoon where time slowed to a crawl and the world seemed soft around the edges. My husband, Robert, was at his downtown office exactly where he always was. The house with its polished marble floors and echoing silent rooms was quiet just as it always was, and I, Vivienne Reed, was alone. Always alone. Then I felt it. The unmistakable weight of eyes on me. At first I dismissed it. A playful gust of wind, a trick of the light, anything to push away the growing unease. But when I turned my head slowly, almost imperceptibly, there he was. Noah Harding. Their family had just moved into the grand, empty mansion 2 doors down. He was leaning against their second-floor window frame, his dark hair falling over intense, almost black eyes, fixed on me with an intensity that sent a slow, unfamiliar heat creeping up my throat, an unwelcome flush across my chest. He didn't flinch. He didn't pretend he hadn't been staring, didn't offer a polite dip of his head. He just watched. And the worst part, a treacherous tiny part of me coiled deep within my gut, a part I hadn't known existed, didn't want him to look away, didn't want the unsettling gaze to break. I wanted it. I craved it. God help me, I did. My rational mind, the one carefully cultivated over decades of structured, respectable living, screamed at me. Go inside, Vivienne. Adjust your sunglasses. Pretend you didn't notice. I even shifted slightly, a practiced, almost imperceptible movement, as if to break the spell, but something in his unwavering focus, something in the way he looked at me, like he saw more than just a woman sunbathing, more than just Robert Reed's impeccably dressed wife, kept me there. He saw something I hadn't even realized was missing. A flicker of recognition. A ghost of the woman I used to be before life sanded down my edges, before I became merely an extension of my husband's success. It was reckless. It was utterly, terrifyingly thrilling, and it was, without a shadow of a doubt, the beginning of the end. Oh, how it was the beginning of the end. A precipice. And I was already leaning into the fall, because after that day nothing was the same. Every sunbeam, every rustle of leaves, every shadow became a potential signal. I could have stopped it. I should have. The well-worn path of my predictable life was still there, clear and safe, stretching out before me, paved with compromise and quiet resignation. But the truth is, a part of me, a long, dormant, rebellious part, didn't want to stop. Not really. I craved that dangerous, unsettling current. And that's how the smallest choices, the most fleeting glances, the tiniest concessions to a forbidden desire, can unravel everything you thought was unshakable. Stitch by careful stitch. It was like watching a perfectly woven tapestry slowly, intentionally unravel. 3 agonizing days passed before I saw Noah again. 3 days where I jumped every time my phone buzzed, where I lingered by windows hoping for a glimpse of movement next door, where I caught myself staring at my reflection in the mirror, turning my head this way and that, wondering what he saw when he looked at me. Was it just a lonely, bored wife? Or something more? That question, that terrifying something more, became my constant companion. On the 4th day, Robert surprised me by coming home early. I was in the kitchen absent-mindedly chopping vegetables for a salad. I had no intention of eating the mundane task a balm to my frazzled nerves when the front door opened. My pulse leaped not with excitement, but with something uncomfortably close to guilt, a hot flush spreading across my cheeks. Oh God, the guilt! It was already a physical thing. "Hey," Robert said, loosening his tie, his voice a familiar drone as he walked in. "Thought we could have dinner together for once." My meeting wrapped early. His smile was warm, familiar, the same one he'd given me for 15 years, a polite, slightly tired curve of his lips. And yet, for the first time in our marriage, it made my stomach twist a sickening knot of deceit. "That sounds nice," I said, forcing a smile of my own, the muscles around my mouth feeling stiff and unfamiliar. The lie tasted like ash. We ate on the patio, the golden light of sunset casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. Robert talked about work, some huge deal he was closing, the promotion that was finally within reach, the endless grind of his corporate world. I nodded along, making the right noises in the right places, offering the appropriate expressions of feigned interest. But my attention kept drifting to the Harding house, 2 doors down to the upstairs window, where I knew Noah's room was, where I imagined him, perhaps looking out at the same sunset. Could he see me? Was he watching us? The thought was electrifying and horrifying all at once. "You're quiet tonight," Robert said, reaching across the wrought iron table to squeeze my hand. His touch was firm, familiar, devoid of any real passion. Everything okay. His touch, instead of comforting, sent a jolt through me. Not from desire, but from the sudden crushing weight of what I was doing, what I was thinking about doing, the secret world I was building in my head. "I'm just tired," I lied, a well-worn excuse that usually sufficed. It always did. That night, as Robert slept soundly beside me, his breathing even and deep, I stared at the ceiling, the familiar pattern of the crown molding, mocking me. I wondered when we'd become this. 2 strangers sharing space, going through the motions bound by inertia more than affection. I tried to remember the last time he'd looked at me the way Noah had, with that raw, unfiltered intensity. The last time I'd felt anything at all beyond the dull ache of existence. The answer terrified me. It was a blank, a terrifying, aching void, and I knew with a sickening certainty that something had to give. The next morning, a crisp white envelope was slipped under our front door. No note. No name. Just a single, elegantly designed ticket to an art exhibit at the downtown gallery, one I'd mentioned wanting to see months ago. A fleeting comment tossed out during a rare, quiet dinner with Robert, who had promptly forgotten his mind already on his next deal. My hands shook as I held it, the thick paper surprisingly heavy, because only one person could have left this. Only one person had been listening, truly listening. It was an invitation, a challenge. The exhibit was crowded when I arrived that Saturday, the air thick with the murmur of cultured voices and the faint, sweet scent of expensive wine. I told Robert I was meeting an old college friend, another lie to add to the growing unstable pile. I saw Noah the moment I stepped into the main gallery. He stood in front of a massive, vibrant abstract painting, his hands casually tucked into his pockets, looking for all the world like he belonged there, an effortless ease about him, that belied his youth. When he turned and saw me, his smile was slow, knowing a secret shared between us. A spark. A silent, dangerous understanding. "You came," he said, his voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the museum's gentle hum. "I shouldn't have," I said, the words feeling brittle, fragile. But I didn't move away as he stepped closer, the space between us crackling with something electric. Dangerous like static electricity before a storm. Around us, people moved through the gallery, oblivious to the earthquake happening in my chest, oblivious to the world shifting on its axis. "We could leave," he said softly, his dark eyes holding mine, captive. "Go somewhere we can actually talk." Every rational part of me screamed to say no, to turn around and walk away and never look back, to run back to the safety of my gilded cage, to the predictability of Robert's detached affection. But the part of me that had been starving for years, starving for attention, for passion, for genuine unadulterated life, whispered yes. A desperate, almost inaudible whisper. And that whisper, that yearning, was louder than all the screams of reason. So, I followed him. The small, independent cafe around the corner was nearly empty, the afternoon lull leaving us tucked away in a quiet corner, bathed in the soft glow of Edison bulbs. Noah ordered coffee for us both, remembering how I took it black with a single sugar cube, a detail I hadn't realized he'd noticed, a small, intimate detail that shocked me with its unexpected tenderness. That little detail, that quiet attention, it hooked me deeper than any grand gesture ever could. "This is a mistake," I said, even as I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic mug, drawing comfort from its heat. My voice was barely a breath. "Probably." His grin was unrepentant, a flash of boyish charm, a glint of defiance. "But you're here anyway." And that was the undeniable, unvarnished truth. I was here. Despite every warning bell ringing in my head, a cacophony of alarms. Despite knowing better. Despite the heavy, unforgiving weight of the wedding band that felt suddenly alien on my finger, a cold, metallic reminder of vows I was shattering. I'd come. We talked for hours. About art, my forgotten passion, which he discussed with surprising insight. About travel, the places I'd always dreamed of seeing, and the adventures he'd already had. About dreams we'd had and lost, and the quiet compromises life forces upon us. He was 22, yes, but he spoke with a wisdom beyond his years, a depth that surprised and captivated me. And I found myself opening up to him in ways I hadn't in a decade, words tumbling out, exposing vulnerabilities I had long kept hidden, even from myself. When he reached across the small, scarred wooden table to brush a stray strand of hair from my face, his fingers grazing my cheek, I should have pulled away. My body stiffened a silent protest. But I didn't. I leaned into the touch, a moth to a dangerous, beautiful flame. My resolve, my carefully constructed facade, was dissolving like sugar in hot tea. Robert was waiting when I got home, seated in his usual armchair in the living room, a laptop balanced on his knees, the soft glow of the screen illuminating his face. "There you are," he said, looking up, his expression mild, untroubled. "How was your day with—" He trailed off, frowning slightly, his brow furrowing in a rare display of confusion. "What was her name again? The friend you went with?" The question hung between us, heavy with everything unsaid, every carefully constructed lie. In that moment, I realized with startling clarity that my husband didn't know me at all. Not the real me, not the woman hidden beneath the layers of expectation. And worse, a chilling thought stole into my mind. I wasn't sure I wanted him to anymore. The chasm between us felt suddenly, irrevocably vast. A silent, gaping maw. The rain started the morning, everything fell apart. I stood at our bedroom window watching fat drops streak down the glass in jagged, chaotic lines, mirroring the chaos swirling inside me. 2 weeks had passed since the museum, since the cafe, since I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, a boundary I'd foolishly believed I could control. 2 weeks of stolen glances across manicured lawns, of hushed phone calls late at night, of lying awake next to Robert while my thoughts spiraled further and further into dangerous, forbidden territory. The hum of our perfectly calibrated house felt suffocating, every breath a struggle. The doorbell rang just past noon. I wasn't expecting anyone. Robert was at work, and the cleaning service didn't come until Thursday. When I opened the door, the breath left my lungs in a rush, a gasp caught in my throat. Noah stood on my porch, water dripping from his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his expression more serious, more intense than I'd ever seen it, a stark contrast to his usual easy confidence. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, urgent, cutting through the drumming rain. Every cell in my body screamed that this was wrong, that I should send him away, slam the door shut, retreat, that nothing good could come from him standing in my foyer while my husband's family photos watched from the elegant side table, their smiling faces, a silent, condemning chorus. But the part of me that had been making bad decisions lately, the part that craved the thrilling precipice, went out. I let him in. I let the devil in. The kitchen, usually a spacious, sterile expanse, felt suddenly too small with him in it. Every inch of space between us charged. He leaned against the cool granite counter while I busied myself making tea. Tea I knew I wouldn't drink, the steam curling mockingly into the air. The silence between us was thick, heavy, with everything we hadn't said, everything we couldn't say. "They're sending me back early," he finally said, his voice quiet, almost resigned. "My semester abroad. I leave Monday." The words hit me like a physical blow, a sudden, sharp impact. I'd known this day would come, had told myself repeatedly, that whatever this was, this dangerous, intoxicating dance, would have to end when summer did. But hearing it aloud, seeing the truth reflected in his troubled eyes, made my hands tremble around the mug I was holding. "I see," was all I managed, my voice thin, reedy, a pathetic sound. Noah crossed the space between us in 2 swift, fluid strides. "Come with me." The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the polished tile floor with a loud, sickening crack. Hot liquid splashed across my ankles, but I barely felt it, the sensation lost in the maelstrom of my thoughts. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely a thread. "Paris. Florence. Barcelona." His eyes burned with an intensity that made my pulse race a wild rhythm against my ribs. "All the places you've talked about seeing, the places you dream of. Come with me. Just for a while. A new beginning. For one dizzying, heart-stopping moment, I let myself imagine it. Waking up in some sun-drenched European city, the scent of fresh pastries and history in the air. No lies. No guilt. Just freedom. The fantasy was so vivid, so potent, I could almost taste the strong espresso, feel the ancient cobblestones beneath my feet, the cool wind on my face. It was everything I'd ever yearned for, laid out like a feast. Then reality came crashing back, brutal and unforgiving. The sound of the rain outside, the sterile quiet of the house, the silent presence of Robert's life, all around me. A concrete cage. "I can't," I whispered the words, tearing from my throat, raw and painful. "Why not?" He reached for my hand, his touch sending sparks up my arm, a familiar, unwelcome jolt. "You're not happy here. You've told me that a dozen different ways without saying the words. Every glance, every sigh, every moment you've spent with me has screamed it. He wasn't wrong. God, he wasn't wrong. But it wasn't that simple. I made vows, Noah. To a man who doesn't see you." His voice dropped, softened, laced with a raw honesty that pierced through my defenses. "I see you, Vivienne. Every part of you. The artist, the dreamer, the woman who craves more than this gilded cage." The truth in his words unraveled something inside me, a tightly wound thread of self-deception. because he did. In a few short months, this boy, this man, had learned me better than my husband had in 15 years. 15 long, quiet years. The front door opened. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers caught in a moment of forbidden intimacy. But it was too late. Robert stood frozen in the doorway, his briefcase dangling from limp fingers, forgotten. His face, usually so impassive, shifted from confusion to dawning horror as he took in the scene, the broken mug, the spreading tea stain on the pristine floor, Noah, standing much too close to me. For one endless suspended moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the relentless drumming of the rain outside, mocking our foolishness. Then Robert's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before, a cold, implacable mask of fury. "Get out!" The words were clipped precise, and they weren't for me. They were for Noah, a primal, guttural command. Noah looked at me, a silent question, in his intense eyes, a flicker of desperate hope of a future that had just vanished. I gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod, and with one last lingering glance that spoke volumes, he left. The click of the front door closing behind him sounded final, like the last page of a very long, very painful book slamming shut. My heart slammed shut with it. Robert didn't yell. He didn't throw things, didn't rage. The quiet fury in his voice, the desolate, broken look in his eyes, was infinitely worse. It was the sound of something breaking irrevocably. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, yet it felt like a shout in the sudden echoing silence of the ruined kitchen. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say that nothing physical had happened? Would that somehow make it better? "Worse, Robert." "I don't." He held up a hand, his wedding band glinting in the harsh kitchen light, a symbol of everything I had betrayed. "Just don't." The pain in his eyes was a physical blow. The rain outside intensified, pounding against the windows like it wanted in, like it sought to cleanse or consume the wreckage. Robert walked slowly, deliberately to the living room, sank into his armchair, his chair in his house where he read his paper every evening like clockwork, and put his head in his hands. When he finally looked up, the devastation in his eyes shattered what was left of my heart. A cold, hard shard. "I knew something was wrong," he said quietly, his voice hoarse with pain. "I just never thought." Neither had I. How could I have been so blind, so selfish? That night, I lay awake in the guest bedroom, a barren, unwelcoming space, listening to the storm rage outside and the even more violent tempest in my head. All the lies I'd told myself that this was harmless, that I was in control, that no one would get hurt, lay exposed for the childish, self-serving fantasies they were. I'd wanted to feel alive. Now I just felt hollow. Empty. A shell. My skin crawled with regret. Somewhere around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed a faint vibration on the nightstand. A text from Noah, from somewhere far away. "Still want you to come. The offer stands." I stared at the glowing screen until my eyes burned the words, a siren song, a tempting escape, the chance to run, to start fresh, to forget. Then I typed out 3 different responses, each more desperate than the last, before deleting them all. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Except that wasn't true. I wanted to rewind time. I wanted to be the woman Robert thought he'd married the woman I had once been. I wanted to not have broken something that could never, ever be fixed. Most of all, I wanted to stop wanting things I couldn't have. Stop wanting. Just stop. The silence in our home became its own living thing, heavy and suffocating. Robert and I moved through the days like ghosts orbiting each other in shared spaces without truly connecting. We slept in separate rooms, ate meals at different times, spoke only when absolutely necessary, our interactions clipped and formal. The house that had once felt too empty now felt suffocating, every room heavy with words we couldn't say, and apologies that wouldn't, couldn't come. What was there left to say? Noah left for Europe on Monday, just as he'd said he would. I watched from behind the half-closed curtains in my bedroom as his parents loaded his luggage into their car, his laughter floating across the lawn like it belonged to someone else's life. A bright, carefree sound that highlighted the dull ache in my chest. He never once looked toward our house. I told myself that was for the best. A clean break. Just another wound. On Tuesday, Robert came home with paperwork. "I've spoken to an attorney," he said, placing the documents on the kitchen counter with careful precision, as if handling something infinitely fragile. "These are just preliminary. No decisions need to be made today." The words divorce papers hung unspoken between us, a stark, painful presence in the quiet kitchen. I stared at the neat stack of papers, the crisp edges, the impersonal font that would dissolve 15 years of shared history into cold legal terminology. My hands stayed at my sides. I couldn't bring myself to touch them. "I don't want this," I whispered, the words barely audible. A plea, a desperate, pathetic plea. Robert's jaw tightened, a muscle clenching. "You made choices, Vivian. We both have to live with that now." The finality in his voice cut deeper than any anger could have. This wasn't a fight. This was a verdict, a sentence. That night, I found myself standing in front of my old art supplies, dust-covered boxes I hadn't opened since we'd moved into this house, since I'd traded my passion for security. The tubes of paint were dried out hard and unyielding, the brushes stiff with disuse. I ran my fingers over a half-finished canvas, a self-portrait I'd started years ago and never completed. The woman in the painting was younger, her eyes brighter, her smile easier. I barely recognized her. Something cracked open inside me then, not just grief for my marriage, for the life that was crumbling, but for myself. For the woman I'd been before I'd let myself disappear into someone else's life, into a role that was never truly mine. For the dreams I'd packed away like these art supplies, telling myself they weren't important, that they weren't practical, that they were just childish whims. The tears came then hot and relentless, streaming down my face, not just for Robert, not just for what we'd lost, but for all the small betrayals, the ones I'd committed against myself long before Noah ever entered the picture. The real betrayals. The next morning, out of habit, I made coffee for two. Robert hesitated when he saw the mug waiting for him on the counter, his expression unreadable, a mixture of wariness and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Hope, resignation. "We should talk," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, my resolve hardening. And for the first time in years, we did. Really talked. Not about logistics or household matters or polite inquiries, but about us. About how we'd drifted apart slowly, imperceptibly, year by year. About the loneliness that had settled into our marriage long before my indiscretion, a quiet, suffocating presence. About the people we'd become separate and distinct, and whether those people still fit together, still had a future. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't a sudden magical fix. But it was honest. Bracingly, painfully honest. It was the truth. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers. My hand didn't tremble. Robert helped me load my things into a moving van, the same one we'd used when we bought this house together all those years ago, a lifetime ago. There was a strange kindness in his eyes as he handed me the keys to my new apartment, a small place on the edge of town, far from the manicured lawns of Windermere. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said, his voice quiet, tinged with a weariness I recognized in myself. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd risked everything to feel alive, to chase a fleeting, dangerous spark, only to discover too late that what I'd really needed wasn't passion, not the kind Noah offered. It was purpose. It was myself. The small studio apartment smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. My first purchase was an easel. My second, a set of good brushes, the finest I could afford. As I unpacked my old art supplies carefully, reverently, my phone buzzed with a message. Noah. From somewhere in Italy. Thought you'd want to see this. Attached was a photo of a sunlit piazza, vibrant with color and life, the kind of place I'd once only dreamed of. I studied it for a long moment, a ghost of a smile touching my lips. Then I typed out my reply. It's beautiful, but my story is here now. Then with a deep breath and a surprising sense of peace, I blocked his number. The finality of it. The relief. The first stroke of paint on canvas felt like coming home. It wasn't perfect. The lines were shaky, the colors uncertain, a tentative exploration of a forgotten landscape. But it was mine. Wholly. Completely. Mine. As I worked, a quiet certainty settled over me. Some choices can't be undone. Some mistakes leave permanent aching marks. But beneath every layer of regret, every poor decision, every moment of weakness, there's always a chance to begin again, to paint a new future, to find the colors that truly belong to you. And this time, I was going to paint my own damned masterpiece. Life, my dears, is rarely a straight line. Sometimes it throws you into a detour you never saw coming, and you find yourself in a place you never imagined. My story is a raw one, a messy one, filled with mistakes and hard lessons. But if there's one thing I've learned from it, it's this: true freedom isn't found in fleeting thrills, but in finding your own purpose and reclaiming your own story. No one can give you that. You have to fight for it. Every single day. What about you? Have you ever had a moment where you realized you needed to reclaim something you'd lost? A dream. A piece of yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm here to listen. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something real, please like this video, subscribe to Grandma's Journal, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. There are many more tales to